Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, poisonous reptiles, and amphibians alike. I am your host, Sir Grimtales, and today we continue on our journey through the creepy tales of Reddit. Beware. Help me, I am trapped and hideous. What do? I have been panicking for 3 days. I cannot do a thing. The emergency services hang up on me. I get dizzy every time I go outside. Everybody laughs at what they think is my costume. My friends have rejected my calls. My husband ran away from me. 3 days ago, my skin turned red as a demon as gazelle horns came out of my head. My hair was swept and claws started to grow out of my hands and feet. I am getting several inches taller every day and far more terrified. A monster is out for me. The voice has been threatening me for ages. I am here, it said the first day. You are to be recruited, it said the second day. The Vision Maker is coming, it told me yesterday, before I started to see a dark, hooded figure outside saying, Robert awaits you. Recently, a voice under the name Tom has been commanding my actions, forcing me to sit down and preventing me from drinking. He claims to be sending Robert to recruit me. I don't know what he is saying, but I am terrified. I have not drank in a day, and yet I feel refreshed. I haven't gotten up or even slept. Tom is commanding me, and I fear he will transform my mind with my body. I have been sat here for days. I can barely access a device to write my tale. Something is happening to me. Please, help me. My true horror story. So to start this out, the following is 100% true. I don't talk about it because people either think I'm crazy and or lying to them. I'm a very rational person, but there are some things I just truly cannot explain. This all started about a year ago, in January. I have sleeping problems, and I usually get to sleep around 12 or 3 a.m. One night, I'm in my room, which is on the second floor, and I hear this bizarre noise from my backyard. I live in the middle of the country, and I'm used to hearing all the local animals at night. It's about 11:30. Everyone else is asleep. The sound that was coming from the backyard was only comparable to a person walking around on leaves. Mind you, it is January, and there is about 6 inches of snow on the ground. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I hear this all night from all parts of my house, and I decide to wait until morning to look at the tracks in the snow. As soon as light breaks, I go outside to look at tracks, but there are none. I am royally creeped out at this point after hearing it all night. Later that day at work, I rather forgot about it for a time, but it continued when I returned home. For the next 5 months, this continues almost every night. It always sounds the same, no matter the conditions outside. I looked for signs of animals, and being an outdoors person and coming from a long family of hunters, even still I found nothing. Sometime later, I was taking my dog for a walk in the backyard when I started to hear it. My 85-pound dog put his tail between his legs and began to snarl and bark. I quickly put him inside and grabbed a gun to confront whatever was out there, but when I went back out, it was gone. After this, I knew I wasn't crazy because my dog heard it too. In the weeks following, I stayed up on the roof trying to collect info on it. I gathered the following. It won't come out if anyone else is with me. It doesn't come out if I have a gun. It won't follow me into my house. It won't attack me. But still, that did not make the situation any better. It started to follow me around my house, but I could never see it or catch it. I finally set up one of my trail cameras for a week, and it stopped. After a week of it not happening, I thought it was over, but as soon as I took the camera down, it would start right back up again. The only way it doesn't come back is if I have my security cameras on. This is the only way to make it leave me alone. If anyone has any ideas on what it could be, please feel free to let me know. Thank you. Behind your eyes. Sit down, Doctor. I need to tell you something. You remember me, right? You introduced yourself to me about a week ago, over the staff kitchen counter. I don't know what it was about you that made me look you in the eye, but I did. I don't usually do that. If you've observed me for a while before saying hello, you'd have known that. I looked you in the eye, and now I need to tell you something I've never told anyone. You might not believe it. You certainly won't like it. It could get me fired, or worse, but I have to not care right now. I have to tell you my secret. When I look people directly in the eye, I can see how they're going to die. I don't see when or why, just how. I don't know why I can see these things. It's been this way my entire life. My earliest memory is of my mother leaning in close to kiss me goodnight, and seeing a flash of headlights and churning tires in the pale blue of her eyes. I didn't know what it meant. Not then. Not until I was 7, and she was killed by a hit-and-run driver. That was when I realized what I'd been seeing. Sometimes I look into people's eyes and see the face of another. That's scary. Sometimes I see the face of the person walking beside them. That's even scarier. And there's nothing I can do about it. I learned the hard way not to interfere. The end result is always the same. Someone always dies. But if I try to stop it, my involvement becomes the catalyst for their death. When I was younger, I looked into the face of a woman just before she crossed a busy road and saw a speeding lorry looming in her eyes. I cried out for her to turn back as she stepped off the pavement. She heard me. She stopped in the road and turned. The van came. She died, and I ran. Any time I think about trying to interfere, I remember her face when she turned back towards me. I was the last thing she ever saw. That's why I work here, among the elderly. These folks have already survived anything that might try to kill them off prematurely, so I rarely see anything frightening in their milky eyes. They're dying simply of time. Too much time. All things considered, I don't think that's such a bad thing to be dying of. I keep my head down, not just because I don't want to see how the people around me are going to perish. I do it because I've developed my own little warped theory that, until I observe a person's cause of death, it can still be changed. It goes back to the woman in the road. If I hadn't looked into her eyes, I wouldn't have shouted out to her. If I hadn't have shouted, maybe she would have seen the van, got out of the way in time. There's no way of knowing, but it gives me comfort knowing that my ignorance of gruesome deaths could be the thing that allows people to live longer, less tragically altered lives. It helps me sleep better at night anyway, some of the time. After my mother was gone, I went into care. The counselors and care workers tried their best with me, but I was well past the age of being blissfully unaware of the true nature of my situation. I knew I was alone in the world, and now I knew what the disturbing things I saw in people's eyes meant. At best, the other children thought I was weird. At worst, they were terrified of me. My young mind thought it would be a kindness to warn others of how they would die. As it turns out, people don't like to hear this kind of thing from a 7-year-old child. You live, you learn, and then you die. From then on, I shut down. I barely spoke and never looked anyone in the eye. They sent me for all sorts of physical and psychological tests, getting nowhere. Doctors of all fields tried to ask me what was wrong, but I had learnt my lesson by then. I didn't tell young Dr. Matthews, who gave me a lollipop after every visit, that she would die engulfed in flames in her own bed. I didn't tell Dr. Edmund with the bright bow ties that his heart would betray him. I screamed bloody murder the day I met Dr. Nichols, after seeing the face of a home intruder wielding a gun lurking behind his polished spectacles. But I can't keep quiet any longer. You've got to help me, Doctor, because I think you're the only one who will. I thought I'd learned to cope with my twisted gift, but it's become apparent that I'm not coping as well as I might, because when I look into your eyes, the only thing I see staring back at me is myself.